Hey guys, let's take the walk cycle that we currently have on the spot and turn it into a progressive walk cycle. As you recall, we had roughed out the forward motion of our character by using the global control, and then gotten rid of any foot slipping by using the world space tweener. There's a couple things that we're going to want to do before we continue to refine our cycle a little bit. We want to have our character continue moving forward. We had muted our Z translation and motion forward, so I'm going to unmute, and now our character is continuing forward. But we don't want to have any motion on the global control. We want to take the motion that is currently on the global control and transfer it to the IK goals and cog of our character. To do that, I'm going to select our move selection set. The move selection set is each one of our foot IK and our cog. For the duration of our cycle here, I am going to come down here and I'm going to right click on my copy XForm tools, and I'm going to copy XForm world space for the entire playback range. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go to my global control and I'm going to reverse this. I want to save this key in case I want to make further adjustments to my cycle. So I'm going to make this minus 83. And then I'm going to, once again, mute this channel. So our character is still walking on the spot. I'm going to select the move selection set one more time. I'm going to come down here to our copy XForm tools. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say paste XForm for the world space for all keys. Now what we've done is we've taken our motion that had been on the global control and we've moved it to our IK goals and our cog where it needs to be. If we want to continue refining our cycle, we can always go back here and unmute this, and our character will continue to walk in space. Another thing that's important for us to address is with our move selection set, we'll come up here and we'll select our Z translation forward. With infinity on, you can see that our cycle currently is just resetting back. So we need to select these curves and cycle with offset for pre-infinity and post-infinity. Let's see how it behaves if we cycle it out 3 times. So at this point, I can see that there's a bit of a hitch as our cycle repeats. So AnimBot has some useful tools that we can use that will help us make sure that our cycle is transitioning nicely. Let's just check a couple of the channels. With infinity displayed, it's very important that the tangents at the beginning and end of our curves flow smoothly. We can see here that there's like just a teeny bit of a hitch on the X translation. We could individually go through every single channel and adjust the tangency of our curves. We could also use this button which matches the tangency at the beginning and the end of your cycle. So if I right click this, I can choose to have my last key tangency now match my beginning. It is possible to also go through each one of the channels and only adjust the beginning, select the curve, and then right click and say last key. So now the last key is matching the tangency of the first key. Let's just go, and I'm going to select all no global, and I'm going to frame our entire cycle. Let's select all of our curves and change it to a polish tangent. Now let's go through and look at a few of our channels and see how much that's cleaned up the tangency, and it looks like it's done a pretty good job. If I look at these little bit of adjustments, white monowake, to get those interpolations looking good. But it's super important to do this as part of your process when you're working on your cycles, because you need the transition between the beginning and end of your cycle to be very smooth, especially if you're going to copy the cycle out for several iterations. Between this polish tangent and the cycle tangent match that we have here, these two tools can help you a lot. As you can see, during the process, I offset the timing of some of my channels. one example of that is here on the chest. If I look at the Y translation up and down, you can see that my first key is actually on 103 and my last key is on 31 because I offset the Y translation up and down. I had copied it from the cog, moved it up to the chest, reduced the amplitude of the curve, and then offset it a little bit in order to get a little bit of squash and stretch in the body as she walks forward. So because of that, I don't actually have a key here. So when I select All No Global in the graph editor, you can see that there's several channels that I did that with because we have keys after frame 29. The first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to go back down here to 29, and I want to bake my keys out on infinity, so any of the channels that I've offset the timing for, they will have keys at the first frame and at the last frame like the rest of the controls. So I'm going to select my timeline with all of my controls selected. I'm going to come down here to my bake controls. If you don't have this button on your AnimBot toolbar, remember you can find it here under Workspace. It's one of the green controls. It's under Baking Tools, and I like to have Bake Infinity down on my toolbar. You can also edit your graph editor toolbar here the same way we can edit the main toolbar, so you can subtract and add any of the controls if you don't already see them when you launch AnimBot. I've selected my timeline down here, and I'm going to go and I'm going to hit this button to Bake Infinity for this time range. So now when I select my chest control and I go to the Y translation curve, you can see I now have a key on frame 1 and on frame 29. I also have some keys before that, right? So I have some tangencies here's messed up. Let's fix that a little bit. But now for our cycle, we actually have keys before and after. We want to get rid of those. So I'm going to go ahead and select my keys here. I know that I have a key on every channel for every control at frame 1 and at frame 29, which is my match key. So I'm going to select these keys, and then I'm going to hit this button, which is going to crop my animation. So now what's happened is I no longer have keys before frame 1 or any keys after frame 29. Now, if I go to frame 85, which would be my cycle extended for 3 iterations, and I want to add some variation to the cycle so that it doesn't look quite so repetitive. In order to do that, I'm going to need keys on the rest of my cycle. Just like we did earlier with our Bake Infinity key down here, I'm going to go ahead and select the entire timeline with All No Global, and now I'm going to hit this button again. And as you can see, I have keys for 3 iterations of my cycle. And it is a progressive cycle. It is moving forward. Also, on the global control, we can view it in place for additional notes from our lead or supervisor.